Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm ffinlo Costain. Plantlife has accused Defra of destroying thousands of acres of species-rich grassland because of the poor design of ELMs incentives to plant herbal leys. I spoke to Jo Riggall, Plantlife's Grassland Advocacy Officer, and I asked her what exactly is going on.
So species-rich grasslands being destroyed is actually information that came from Defra themselves. And it was in a quote that they provided for an article in the Times recently. And they actually said by area, just 1.5% of priority habitat species-rich grassland, such as hay meadows, have been turned over to herbal leys. And now these priority habitat grasslands are actually recognised by law as some of the most threatened and unique habitats in England, and which often have not seen a plough for many decades, if not centuries. So to spray and plough them for a temporary habitat, which most likely won't last more than a handful of years, does actually destroy these old, incredibly biodiverse habitats. So it's a question that we have as well. Why are Defra allowing their destruction?
It does sound, when Defra says just 1.5%, as though they're trying to downplay this.
Yes, and indeed, and by even using the word just, it does downplay the fact that, in our view, no priority habitat grassland should actually be entered into the herbal ley option and be destroyed.
Do you think that this is down to poor scheme design, or is it bad monitoring?
We just don't know. So actually the eligibility of the ELM Sustainable Farming Incentive SFI herbal ley option stipulates arable land and permanent improved grassland. So we don't know why priority habitat species-rich grassland is being entered. And Defra do seem to have that data. So the question is, are they aware and are actively allowing for priority habitat to be sprayed and ploughed? And just very quickly, it is worth saying that there are some safeguards to species-rich grassland, and those are through the environmental impact assessment agriculture regulations. But in practice, we know that they can actually be quite hard to enforce. So we have asked Defra for more details, but they've not yet provided any answers.
Did people warn Defra about possible unintended consequences arising from the herbal leys incentive before ELMs came into effect?
I think what's always been pointed out by a range of organisations is that there are risks around a pick and mix style approach of scheme design. And that's where there is such flexibility for farmers to choose options. And obviously that flexibility is helpful for farmers when planning their business, but it's also coupled with unbalanced incentives across the scheme. And that makes some options disproportionately attractive or easier than others. And so, as an example, last year, we saw Defra had to put a cap on a range of options as to how much land could be entered, such as winter bird food. And so there's also been previously expressed concerns about the budget as well, because if a lot of the ELM budget is being used for SFI options like herbal leys, then it means that there's less money for countryside stewardship and landscape recovery later on. So unfortunately, we are now seeing these risks unfold.
It sounds like part of this, at least, is because the scheme has been designed around input measures rather than outcomes. Why do you think Defra chose to focus on input measures for ELMs?
It's a good question, because there's long been a call for new agri-environment schemes to be designed with specific outcomes in mind, or I guess payment by results is another way that you could describe it. So for example, whether plant diversity has increased after management. And actually, in past years, Defra were involved in payment by results trials. So obviously, I think we do recognise there's huge challenges involved in designing a new agri-environment scheme, and expect that there would be more complexities in the design and monitoring of a payments by results system. However, also the National Audit Office have criticised Defra for not being sufficiently outcome focused in the design of the scheme and lacking clear objectives in order to really clearly articulate how the scheme will contribute to environmental targets that the government themselves have set out in the environmental improvement plan. But it is worth noting that Defra have recently said that they are looking to address these by setting smart targets and mapping each action. So I think that would be really interesting to see that piece of work if it is published.
Do you have a sense of what area of farmland has been affected?
Again, you've preempted a question that we do have for Defra, and we have asked Defra this, because 1.5% of priority grassland habitat, it could mean a total area that's actually been entered as herbal leys. So if that relates to 2023 figures, then the uptake figures for herbal leys, I think, were around 175,000 hectares. So 1.5% of that is over 2,500 hectares of the rarest grassland gone. Or does it actually mean 1.5% of all total priority habitat grassland, which would be even more, significantly more hectares? So I think what's really worrying is that there's been no further clarification from Defra on what those figures mean, and actually whether they will prevent in the future species-rich grassland being entered into this scheme, because over future years, the cumulative loss of species-rich grassland could be huge if they aren't prevented from being entered into herbal leys.
Species-rich grassland can, of course, take centuries to establish. If they've been ploughed out for herbal leys, what can be done at this stage?
I think, unfortunately, for the grasslands that are lost, there's kind of little that can be done, because in our view, they are irreplaceable habitats, which means the complexity, kind of the complex soil structures, the plant communities, fungi communities can take centuries, if ever, to really re-establish as they were when they were undisturbed. So I think we really need to focus on getting answers from Defra and action to prevent this from happening in future years of the scheme.
That was Jo Riggall from Plantlife. More news as ever on our website 8.9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.